Welcome back to FreightWaves Global Supply Chain Week. I'm Kaylee Nix here with another fireside chat. Today we've got Andrew Lockwood of Suddath Logistics down in Orlando, Florida, where hopefully it's a little warm and a little sunny down there. Andrew, how's it going today?
I was looking around for the fire since it's a fireside chat. It's nice and 70 degrees. So I know it's a little warmer than than where probably most of y'all are in the country today.
Chattanooga's been a little bit on the cold side, so I'm looking for that fire as well. But nice to know that you're staying warm. You're fresh off an appearance on Midday Market Update here, so you're familiar with the Freight Waves runaround. How was that appearance for you the first time that you met with some of our hosts?
It's always fun to be on FreightWaves and talk final mile and logistics. There's so much happening in the world there, and that's where I just love the love the conversation and the information back and forth.
Well, we're super excited to have you and really glad that you're joining us as part of our Global Supply Chain Week, massive 8-day event talking all aspects of supply chain. And today we're talking a little bit more about final mile, specifically for manufacturers and manufacturers who have kind of cut out the middleman and gone for this non traditional system of getting product from manufacturer directly to consumer. So 2020, the last entire year, really, the buzzword of the year feels like it should have been disruption, right? COVID came in, threw a wrench in everything, and really just disrupted the way that we know supply chain as it was before the entire global pandemic. Talk to me a little bit about your three maybe key points of what was disrupted in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on it. And disruption's been the buzzword, but everyone's kind of ready to move on from, yeah, COVID happened, so what? So what I'm seeing, especially in my job right now, there's so many supply chains looking for, to really retool and redesign how they get their goods to the market. We're seeing just this in just, lots of different ways. From a disruption standpoint, you have, a lot of manufacturers trying to get stuff out of Asia, import it into the U.S. The ports are clogged up. You've got shipping delays. Just looking at the spot market rates last year, it was 30-40% increase from the previous year. So in general, we're seeing transportation and supply chain costs going up. We're seeing lead times. There's crazy variability there. In fact, there was this survey ShipStation released last year, and with the onset of COVID, consumer expectations from a lead time standpoint shifted from 5 days to 8 days. So there's just a whole bunch of change that's going on there, from a disruption standpoint. Let me point this out too, and this is a fun stat to keep, under your hat so you can use in the next meeting. But 21% of retail sales last year were done online as opposed to bricks and mortar stores. Think about that. So 21% e-commerce versus traditional bricks and mortar. And you're like, Andrew, why should I care about that? Well, that's a 50% increase in 2 years from where it was 2 years ago. So when we talk about disruption, I think it's good to put numbers to that. Yeah, anecdotally, we feel that in our supply chains in different ways. But consumers are really changing how they are buying things and then what their expectations are in the final mile for the delivery piece.
So, when we think about the way that things have changed in the last year, we focus a lot on the habits that shippers have had to change and the consumer buying habits. But what about that middleman, that brick and mortar store who has experienced that loss? When we take them out of the equation, what does that mean for goods being delivered from manufacturer to consumer without the person in the middle to handle that maybe delivery or that storefront for purchasing?
Yeah, I think it just adds a lot to the complexity of what you need to consider, especially if you're watching this, listening to this, you're a shipper or a manufacturer. When you talk about going direct to the consumer, I like to say, hey, start with the backward, from a backwards point of view. What do you want that experience to be like? Are we delivering a tube of toothpaste, or is this, a large appliance that needs to be installed or shelves? Start with what does that experience need to look like and then work backwards. You make a great point. I mean, there's a lot of supply chains looking to skip the middle distribution points or even the stores now. You're seeing some interesting stuff from like the Walmarts and Targets of the world with this whole acronym BOPIS, BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store. And so effectively, again, this conversation is about final mile. In those models, the consumer is the final mile. They're going directly to distribution center, the local warehouse. There's some buzzwords there, or the true bricks and mortar store, and still picking up, but they're foregoing the shopping experience. For our shippers out there, that can be a really good thing. There's a lot of efficiencies to be gained if you know, hey, I'm going to be there in an hour. Here's the shopping list. I need you to go through the warehouse or the store, go and pick it, put it in a bag, and I'm going to pick it up in an hour. Fewer people in your store, it's COVID friendly. The list goes on and on. But yeah, I think what I'm seeing in my world is, depending on who the customer is, what the product or service that is being provided there, you're seeing some forego the middle pieces of the supply chain. Others are retooling or retrofitting what they are, in essence, to be a better part of their distribution strategy.
So you mentioned that BOPUS aspect kind of anecdotally, and maybe just to add a little bit of context. I've got a side gig here in Chattanooga. I work at Lululemon, which is an athletic retail store. Worked there for 3 holiday seasons now, and we chose to implement the BOPUS option back in May when we reopened with COVID safe policies. And we had cut store capacity down to only 10 people at the smallest point. And I will say that just from personal experience, our utilization of that BOPUS technology, that idea of, hey, I'm going to reduce my risk of exposure by not coming into the store, but I still want to support these people and I still want to get the goods that I want. I'm going to do that and make it in the lowest contact option possible. And we saw that skyrocket specifically with our store. And we also do a lot of our online orders. We do what's called a ship from store. So we'll go and we're the product pickers. We print the packing label, we package it, and we drop it for FedEx, and then they take it out. So we're kind of that middleman between what the consumer wants and getting it out to them as well, which, I wouldn't have thought of that until having this conversation with you.
No, it's very true, and you make a great point because in the fashion industry, you think about it. If you're shipping something, I mean, it's the shipping, the lowest level shipping cost. It's going to be a few dollars. If you look at USPS, you're talking $4 or $5. FedEx, UPS, standard rates are going to be a little more than that. And then maybe your company gets a discount off of that, so it's still fairly cheap. But in general, Business Insider had this. Another survey, and they said basically 53% of the total cost of shipping is in that final mile. So, in your circumstance, you've got the parcel offerings. I can buy it online and have you ship it to me for a nominal fee, or maybe those few dollars are important to me as a consumer, and I want to just pick it up at your store. I think I guess that brings me to point number two. There's really no one size fits all solution here. It's very much about the product, the experience, and how your supply chain's structured. I think about the difference between fashion, appliances. We talked about tubes of toothpaste. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to pay shipping on a tube of toothpaste unless it's with a bag of groceries, or I can go pick it up. Something like clothing, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts here. I think America's, most consumers are kind of divided here. They like to try on clothes. They like the experience of shopping. Some are just, hey, I want to forego all that. It's a hassle. I have to get in my car. It's not COVID, as COVID friendly. I just want to point and click, get my things in 2 days, and move on with my life. From your own circumstance, what does that break to? Is it 50-50 that you're seeing, or is it 80-20? What do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily give it a percentage because I think it truly varies from person to person. Like you said, there's not a one size fits all solution. People aren't going to be happy with the this or that of what we're doing on the retail side. And I think that that brings up something that I've seen talked about a lot in the last few weeks, few months, is how good your experiences as a consumer with the goods that you're buying can also factor in or be influenced by how good is the returns process when something that you got doesn't necessarily work. And, I've talked to Andrew Cox a lot about this. As far as the retail side goes, a lot of retailers see massive costs in the reverse logistics, in that reversal of the final mile. Well, you know, I didn't like this. I'm going to send it back. Now they have to drop it off at a UPS or FedEx location and then ship it back. So I guess I would say that as far as my experience with people coming in to return goods specifically to Lululemon, we see a lot of people who come and will say, I ordered this, I ordered 3 of this item because I wasn't sure of my size. Let me come and return it in the store, either get store credit, find the size color that I like, or just get my money back. And I think that the interesting thing that we've seen is a lot of our goods, they go back out on our sales floor after being held in an isolation period to keep it COVID safe. Our goods will go back on our sales floor. If they're a regular part of our in-store inventory, they'll be kept at full price. Or if there's something that has come back and is maybe a one-off, like a one-off random color or a random shirt that's offered online but not in store, a lot of times we'll mark it down and we'll put it on our markdown shelf and it'll fly out the door the next day. So, specifically with our retail experience, it's been kind of this, I wouldn't say surprising factor, because I would have expected people, I myself, I've bought multiples of things and then returned them if I didn't like them or they didn't fit, kept the one that did fit. So, I think it's that shift in consumer behavior that's really being seen as well. And it does have an impact. It has an impact on how much product we have on in our store, but then it also has a product or an impact on those shipping costs coming back for people that aren't able to return those to brick and mortar stores.
Hmm. And that's a great point. I mean, returns in of itself, I think there's different ways to view that from a cost standpoint. Look, here's my challenge to everyone that's watching and listening to this, that does produce or is in charge of a supply chain, is there's a story to be told where supply chain costs and shipping costs are not just part of doing the business, that it just hits your expense line. No, I think it has this indirect way of shaping what the product experience is. Here's what I mean by that. The returns, and you mentioned for some retailers, I mean, it's a large number, but how much more willing is a consumer to buy from your store, buy your products because you have these return policies in place? So even though on the profit and loss statement it can be viewed as purely an expense, it may actually be a really strong reason why consumers want to do business with you. You make returns easy. We can dive into the economics of it, and that's a whole nother discussion in of itself, where final mile cost, the perceived value of it from a consumer standpoint is probably going to be different than what it actually truly is, because the costs continue to go up, and we can dive into that. But yeah, I thought returns is, when I heard that, that the consumer's mentality towards ease of returns and ease of doing business with somebody is something to be, something to think about.
So let me ask you this. If you're a shipper and you're looking at metrics to figure out, okay, how can I better target my consumer audience? How can I tap into what they're wanting? What are some of the metrics that you're going to be looking at most to try and gain some of that insight about what the people who are buying from you really truly want, therefore what you can do better to cater to their needs?
Yeah, I think one thing that I automatically think about is just this metric of freight or shipping as a percentage of revenue. And there's no right target there. I think it all depends on what you're making. I mean, for example, let's talk about appliances. So if you go to one of the big box retailers, or maybe your local appliance store, and you're interested in this $600 dryer, what's a reasonable price in a consumer's mind to deliver that from that bricks and mortar location inside their home? And that may include going up a flight of stairs and hooking up the dryer vent and plugging in the electricity. And so, from what I've found and just some of the survey work that I've done on my own over the past year, there's a sweet spot there for appliances and electronics, around $100 to $150. You're going to come across some that are, going to be a little bit less. You're going to, definitely come across some that are more, but that to me is really the larger item sweet spot. Now, um, if you think about smaller items, obviously the shipping is going to be a lot less. You buy something randomly off Amazon, and I was thinking about this today. I don't have any market insight other than just the logic here, but we pay for an Amazon Prime membership. Let's say it's $99. And I randomly surveyed my Amazon driver in my neighborhood the other day, and I said, "Hey, how many stops are you making today?" So he had 108 stops that day. That was a light day for him. He said in general it's 140. So start doing the math. Let's just say an individual delivery for Amazon's $5. And you start doing the math, and so you start to get a good sense of the economic puzzle here for carriers. So what the problem Amazon has to solve there, as well as shippers. So back to your question from a metrics, your freight, your logistics, final mile shipping cost as a percentage of your revenue, what should be reasonable? And then and again, start with the end in mind. What do you want the experience to be? Is it just a dryer delivery, or do you want the customer? This is the big unboxing moment, right? There may not be a YouTube video that comes with it, but this is a big deal. They just bought a dryer. If they have to go and get a pickup truck from their Uncle Jimmy and then drive across town and load it in with their best friend, it's not as much fun. So no, that's a good jumping off point.
So I'm part of the TikTok generation, right? I'm on TikTok all the time, and my For You page is constantly inundated with these product hauls and like this is what I found on Amazon today, and all of this, and that's on the small parcel side. But I follow like a pretty significant amount of influencers who have made some pretty big purchases over their quarantine, specifically fitness influencers who maybe have gotten into the idea of purchasing a Nordic track or a Peloton bike. And you talk about that massive unboxing and the excitement that leads up to it. And then for Peloton, for the example, a lot of them have expressed this massive disappointment because they're in the groups of people who were quoted 8 to 12 weeks for delivery, and then it was 16, and then it was 20, and then it was 24. So maybe using the case of Peloton, maybe just using that case of the big unboxing experience in general. Talk to me a little bit about how important it is for consumer sentiment and for just consumer attitude when things don't go right on those deliveries and they don't get that experience that they're looking for.
Oh, such a good point. And I'm glad you brought that up because the honesty is really, I mean, let's go back to the basics here. Some golden rules here in life. You got to tell the truth to your consumers. Uh, if I know that it's going to be a long lead time, at least I know, and I can make an educated decision based on what I want to do. I think when you see these negative Google reviews and just frustration in the marketplace, it's because a bag of goods has been sold and that bag of goods has not exactly been delivered or at least on time.
Three thousand
Now,
dollars has been shelled out for a bicycle.
exactly. And here's what I do like about and again, random neighborhood surveys here in Orlando, Florida. So I'll be running around the neighborhood, usually behind a stroller with my kids in it. And again, I saw a Peloton delivery in process. Shiny van. The two team members have their uniforms on. Like it's a big deal. You bought a Peloton, you're getting it delivered in your driveway, and it looked like a great experience. Like they were both standing on their porch outside their front door, just super psyched that the shiny Peloton van was delivering it. Going back to the experience, but yeah, I think to your point, with the disruption we've seen, stuff's going to happen. Your product's going to be delayed coming out of Asia, or there's going to be some kind of event where you're not able to deliver on time. But more than that, I think giving consumers visibility, updates, whatever that looks like, use the technology to your advantage. It at least shows that you're trying to play offense with what you're delivering rather than taking a defensive posture and then getting all these negative Google reviews. And it's a bad, vicious cycle to get into. So, anytime I can help educate, shippers or manufacturers, hey, play offense with your consumers. They can be your best advocates. And in from what you've seen too, I mean, we see some negative reviews that cancel culture is real, whether we like it or not. And so, how we deal with folks, especially the younger generations, there's a huge desire for visibility. Where does this stuff come from? What is it like? What's inside of it? And the more information we can give, and the less kind of I just call it BS marketing. The less BS marketing, the more true information visibility, the better off you're going to be from in handling those situations.
So circling back to the loss of that middleman between the manufacturer and the consumer. So we've taken out that brick and mortar store. Consumer receives a product, they're not necessarily happy with it. They've got to send it back to their manufacturer. If you could offer one piece of advice to manufacturers who are maybe new to this whole having to handle that final mile delivery, final mile experience themselves, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh gosh, it's a tough question because there's so many different paths to go down with that. But um, dealing with returns, you can take what is perceived as a negative expense there to your advantage. Make it right. I think back to one of the largest opportunities I was able to be a part of, and it dealt with actually taking a damaged product experience on the electronics end. And this company was willing to drive in this case, several hundred miles to customer locations, swap out the product at no cost, take back the damaged product. And essentially, they understood this whole idea that when you do the right thing by the consumer, it's a little bit of a pay it forward, mentality. Yes, there's a cost to do that, but you have somebody's buying power and loyalty for a long time after that. So that's definitely one thing to be considered. And again, I'm going to go back to this point. Start with the end in mind. What do you want that to be? One great example that came up this week, and I'll kind of leave it with this example is um, neat technology. You've seen the emergence of the she sheds and the home offices that are they're kind of modular type deals where you can ship these and put one in your backyard because everyone's staying at home with COVID. And while I love this guy's idea, his dimensions are going to require an oversized, overweight tractor trailer. And I'm like, oh man, if you just started with the end in mind, right? What can be shipped like realistically, and how do you package it together? And then let's work backwards because that experience and how you deliver it is everything.
Start at the end. It's going to reduce your costs at the forefront, right?
That's it. So many headaches alleviated when you start at the end.
Only we had a crystal ball to tell us what the end is going to be like in every situation, you know?
That's true.
All right, Andrew. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to learn more about what you do down in Suddath Logistics in Orlando. Maybe you want to come spend some time on the beach. That would be nice right now.
That's
Where,
right.
where
That's
can they
right.
go to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can always email me, andrew.lockwood@suddath.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Um, there's lots of different ways to get a hold of me, but I would love to talk logistics. There's so many different fun aspects of final mile and just the industry in general. And I love just being able to connect with others like yourself to talk through different things like this. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here. And I certainly learned a lot. If you guys learned a lot, just remember we've got several more days left of things to do, great conversations to have during our Global Supply Chain Week. Stick around, lots more information coming up. And thanks to Andrew again. We'll be back.